and welcome to a new episode of Lily High on Life. And our really exceptional guest this week is the amazing Rita Panahi. Rita, welcome to Lily High on Life.
Oh, pleasure to be with you, Lily. Thank you.
I was so excited about interviewing you because there are so few people that hold my views, not just about politics, but about life. And there's you, and you espouse them every week, many times into many communities. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a busy period. So Sky News is probably where you see me most. So we've got Outsiders, which is Sunday mornings. I've got my show, the Rita Panahi show, which is Friday nights. And then there's other spots you do throughout the week. And then the Herald Sun, which is our paper here in Melbourne. It is the highest selling paper in the country. A lot of people think one of the Sydney papers would have that honour, but it's always, well, for a long time, been the Herald Sun. And so I write in there, I write my columns for the Herald Sun. And so it's a very busy week, but I do have I have planned it, so technically I have Wednesdays off, because I think you just need at least one day off a week.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it can just, even if you've got a couple of things on a day, a couple of commitments, when it rolls on week after week, it can get really taxing. So I had that for a period where I was working 7 days a week, and you just need one day aside to sort
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense, and the fact that you give that to yourself also means that you're taking care of yourself as well as everything else you've got. What do you love? What's a favourite part of what you're doing?
Work-wise, or?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. It's also different. You know, they're all different. They all take something different to produce.
Your own show, when it's your own show, do you actually get to choose what's going on there? Or
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I forgot to mention the other thing I do, which I did today, so you would think it would be fresh in my mind, which is, apart from the show I do for Sky News, which is for the network, I also do the same almost the same formats. It's the Rita Panahi show Overtime. So that's another hour, but that's purely for our digital platforms, because that's where the bulk of our audience is. That's where we've got a huge audience. So that goes not just on the website, but the YouTube channel, and obviously, you know, it's a podcast on Spotify, it's on Flash, it's on, you know, all those sort of digital mediums.
And that would be an international audience too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with Sky News Australia. A lot of people don't realise our online digital audience is massive, and it's much bigger than the free-to-air networks. It's bigger than what the ABC has. It's and a lot of it is based in the US, the UK, and obviously Australia as well. So that's somewhere where we've really excelled and we're focusing on, because that's just where the numbers are, and also where the growth is as well. So that's an exciting part of the business. So I probably do enjoy that, because when you do that, you can focus on, it just happens that that's the areas that I'm most interested in as well. So when you do the program for TV station, you obviously have to have a very good mix of local and international. You can't just have international content unless, you know, it's a tailored international show. But if you've got a primetime slot, you're expected, and you should be doing local news as well, because the audience wants that, and that's what you're there for. So, that's the big difference between the two programs. The digital stuff is a lot more international in its content.
And between all of that, you really get to talk and pick and choose what you want to talk about.
It's a lot of content. I mean, Outsiders is kind of known for that. Obviously, it's a 2-hour show and it has 3 hosts, but it's known for just going through so many topics at a really rapid pace. So sometimes you get to have the luxury of digging into an issue and having a proper discussion, but when you've got 3 hosts, one of the advantages is you can actually cover a lot, have that bit of banter, have the essential bits of information, and then you move on to the next thing. And then you've got your podcast, so you can follow up, pick up, do whatever. Yeah, so the digital show, some people just listen to that, so access it via a podcast, but you can watch it on Flash or on our YouTube channel or on skynews.com.au. So it's and all the other, there's so many digital platforms, I can hardly keep up with them. It really is amazing. So did you, when you started in journalism and you were a journalist writing to start with, did you envisage going into television? How did all of that happen for you? No, look, I was never I consider myself a columnist, a commentator. I have obviously done pieces which are reporting or a more sort of traditional form of journalism, but I like to really distinguish between the two. I think that's one of the reasons why trust in the media is so low, is because those lines are being blurred. So, you've got opinion and then you've got news, and news reporting should be most of the time it isn't, should be entirely impartial. It should be fact-based. It should be straight down the line. None of the journalists' own views and biases should be apparent in the copy, but sadly that's not what we see. Whilst opinion is obviously whatever you want it to be. But I mean, obviously you back up what you're saying by quoting relevant facts and figures and studies or whatever it is, however you want to put it together. But that's one of the things I don't like, is there's so many news pieces you read or even see on television, and it's very apparent that you're only getting part of the picture, or whatever you're getting has been heavily influenced by the biases of the reporter, and that discipline of separating those two is not as apparent as it should be. And we do have a lot of activist journalists in all mediums who but Rita, it's not unfortunate. What you've described is what it should be and what it used to be. But it's not just the journalists anymore. It's the whole network of people. So you have their bosses. And what I wanted to ask you, because you actually speak to a lot of these people as well, how is it possible that really smart, clever people who are supposed to be journalists can be so gaslighted, lied to? Do they really believe the garbage? They do. I don't. A lot of people say, they're writing what they're told or reporting on, TV or radio, whatever the medium is, what they're told, or they're doing it for the money, or they don't. No, it's purely ideology. Just people in the media overwhelmingly lean left, always have, and in Western nations anyway, I'm not sure about the other countries, really fairly excited by the fact that the majority of people, certainly in the US, and I think increasingly here, I don't think it's a majority here, but it's certainly a majority in the US, are very much awake to the media's shortcoming's. And the politicians as well. I mean, what Biden's done. They know, the media biases mean that, the Biden administration is never going to be held to the same standard that the Trump administration was, because, they were out to kill Trump as soon as he was, or even before he was elected. The entire the entire agenda was to undermine his presidency and to have just, one rolling crisis after another. It was the Russian collusion hoax or, the more ridiculous sort of crises they conjured up. But I think there was a poll. I mean, they poll this sort of stuff in the US fairly often, so it's easy to sort of keep track of public sentiment. But they poll trust in the media, and amongst Republicans, one poll I saw.
I don't.
Well, yeah, people do lie to pollsters, but I think they're still the best guide we have. But it was only 11% of Republicans who had trust in the media. So, like 1 in 10 is a fairly deplorable number, and it's not surprising because they've seen, how issues have been covered. They've seen how consecutive presidents have been treated, and like take the border crisis. That was made into this massive deal under Trump, that there's kids in cages, and it's like, they were making all the usual tired Nazi comparisons and all this nonsense when, the cages came around under the previous administration. And there were a lot less people, and now that those cages are full, and some of these pictures coming out of the detention, they've got record numbers crossing illegally. None of that seems to be an issue. It only becomes an issue if Texas or Florida sends a bus full or a plane full to some Democrat area, and then it's an outrage.
So brilliant. The Martha's Vineyard thing.
They completely freaked out. I mean, this is like an affluent, you would think the most well-equipped place to deal with an influx of needy people, but they didn't last 24 hours. And they're supposed to be a sanctuary city. So all these sanctuary cities that, say no human is illegal, that they don't practice what they preach. So
at all.
No.
At
so
all.
that's I think, that as biased as the big tech giants have been, they have also still provided a level of transparency. I think just things like seeing journalists on Twitter when they, again, not opinion leaders or not analysts or columnists or whatever, opinion people, but people who are supposed to be, completely hoping to be impartial, and then you see their Twitter activity and you see, wow, they're very political and they're very set in their ways, and they're like, oh, well, that kind of explains what I heard on the radio, or that's what explains what I saw on television. So I think in that way it's been illuminating.
And
same with
God for Elon Musk, because we were able to get proof of what was really happening. Have you had a chance to listen to the Senate hearings that were going on last week?
Oh, yeah.
Where they had the Twitter executives, these kids in their 20s, 30s, maybe 40, and it's like, who gave you the right?
Yeah, I saw that. That was... But yeah, if you're on Twitter a lot, and I'm on Twitter a lot, like none of that was surprising. Like everything that's come out in the Twitter files is pretty much what we suspected and what we knew was happening, because just about every big conservative account has had shadow bans or what they call visibility filters. I've had it on my account. Like even this morning I went to tweet about James O'Keefe, who was the founder and CEO of Project Veritas, and he's just left those positions as CEO, and we follow each other, and so he should be able to come up very easily. He's a verified account too, and I put in his full name, and all these imposter accounts, all these fake accounts came up. His didn't. So I had to, when I was trying to at him to link to something, I had to get out of it, do a search on him, find him, copy the Twitter address, and then put it in and it was just ridiculous. It was like, this is a guy who's got he's probably got over 1 million followers. He's verified. We follow each other. All the algorithms means when I put in at James O, like he should pop up. But that's one of these so-called visibility filters. So it's not just suppressing the reach of your tweets; it's suppressing people's ability to find you for your tweets.
And you have a lot of visibility, so. You know, most people feel powerless to do anything, but you have a platform, so you're able to at least broadcast and share. Is there more you'd like to do? Is there a frustration? How do you feel about the fact that so many people are getting scammed?
Scammed by, I think, like misled by media.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I just think a lot of people in Australia are just generally apathetic, so they just don't care. I mean, I just think they've got other priorities. They, you know, might watch a few minutes of the 6 o'clock news. They might look at the headlines, but the news cycle isn't, you know, particularly important to them. So, and I don't begrudge them that. Like, if that's not a priority, then and I don't think you're obliged to be interested and engaged. But the rest of them, like, if you are politically active or even just, you know, you're invested in the news cycle, there's so much now where, you know, you have the opportunity now to get a wide source, you know, a wide-ranging sources of information. So, you know, like, we've all got like a powerful computer in our hands. You know, you can read,
do stuff.
Well, yeah, and you can read widely. You can read from, you know, you can see how, say, the Federalist might treat a topic compared to the Huffington Post or the Daily Beast, or, you know, how CNN handles something compared to Fox News, and so there is so much opportunity to be informed, but then I know you can also be, you know, misinformed. And sometimes people who are as really active online are some of the most misinformed people. So
understandable that so many people went along with it, but you're not somebody that goes along with anything that doesn't feel right for you.
Yeah.
And Rita, you actually seem to have planned. You plan before you jump, which is really nice. And what I mean by that is that your decision to go into journalism, your decision that you make all the time about which shows you will agree to sub for, and have you sort of planned your life going forward with anything apart from you won't work on Wednesdays?
Well, this year. I worked on Wednesdays last year. No, I do think, like, over the, you know, working insane hours the last few years, you do need that one day off. Even if it means you're working more on another day, it gives you just this.
But are you a planner? How do you make those designs?
Much. I mean, like, end of last year, I signed up for another 2 years, and the thinking there was that my son started VCE this year, so he's got 2 more years of high school, and so at the end of that, I can make a decision about, okay, do I want to stay here? Do I want to move to a different city or even move overseas? So I'm not one who sort of has these firm 5-year, 10-year plans and, you know, its goals are up on my fridge. I'm not that sort of person, but I'm not also just sort of live day to day. There is some, you know, planning ahead and just options of, you know, what's
how and
best.
what.
Yeah, so I haven't decided. I mean, a lot of it will depend on if my son wants to move to the US. He's keen to live in the US. He probably will end up going to college in the US. That's his current plan anyway.
But my question was more that you have it was very important to you to be financially secure and successful.
Yeah.
And you started planning for that quite early on. Did it have anything to do with being an immigrant here and watching the differences? Because you were born in America, but you grew up in Iran.
That's right.
And I love some of the things that I've read and heard about all of that. But talk to me in terms of how you felt that, how you decided that you were going to be financially secure and went about doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very important because financial security gives you options and gives you choices. They're the same thing, options and choices. What the hell?
When did you realise that?
I've been up since 4 a.m. this morning and it's like around 8 now, so that's probably why I'm not as coherent as I could be.
I really appreciate you coming anyway.
This is one of the early mornings. So, yeah, financial security is very important because it gives you options. So
when did you realise that? Like
pretty early on.
When you first came here, so when you were still
no, not that early because I was only about 8 or 9 then, but it was, it's pretty apparent that if you don't have that, you're obliged to do things you don't want to do. You might have to work in an industry or in jobs you don't like, or you may have to, I don't know, go and marry somebody you don't want because you need the financial security. So, just having that independence and
you worked in the financial sector.
Yeah.
Was that part of what?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was essentially.
Was it something you were encouraged to do from home?
No.
Or something that you just realised that was important and so you went ahead?
Well, no, it's important. I don't think that's like a particularly...
But not a lot of people know how to do it.
I don't. That's it. I mean, I think it's not a particularly profound sort of realization to know that you should be able to create wealth if you work hard and if you work smart, and having wealth gives you certain opportunities that lack of wealth won't.
But it's not even about the wealth, and it doesn't matter.
Well, about how to get there. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to get there, but I did know finance sector was where there were all sorts of opportunities. You could climb the ladder, you could earn decent money. So yeah, it was something I picked. And also, when I graduated from high school, I was 17. So, at that age, you don't always know precisely what you want to do for the rest of your life. But so yeah, the choice was, well, I don't want to do an arts degree because that's a waste of my time. I don't really have the engineering, or that's really not my cup of tea. That wasn't going to be what I was going to do well in for university. So you kind of whittle down into what your strengths are and where the opportunities are. And again, for a lot of kids who are from migrant backgrounds, you don't have the network here necessarily. Not all migrant backgrounds, but a lot of them, particularly if you don't have a big community and family here. So you don't have the benefit of getting that leg up from family and friends and, perhaps your private school network or whatever. So you have to kind of build, you have to sort of start at the bottom and build and, climb the ladder by yourself. You can't have, I'm going to, intern at this particular firm and they'll give me through the door and they will give me this opportunity. You just don't have those options open to you. So you do have to sort of work harder and try to work smarter as well. But migrants do that really well. I mean,
I love the fact that you think that the majority of kids just know that or have that attitude, because it really is a minority and not a majority. And also, I mean, when you started and you decided you were going to leave the financial institution, you were going to plan another life, you were able to do it.
Well, that was accidental. So I was always going to leave banking and finance like early. Like I was always planning to say at 30 to leave it. So I got into it quite young. I was still doing my undergraduate degree and I started working in the industry, and I was like, why the hell am I even doing this degree? Like I'm interviewing people for jobs and, you know, they've got postgraduate degrees and like, you know, and I just couldn't see how the degree gave me any benefit in how to do the job day to day. So I was just like, nah, I'm going to stuff that. I did go back and end up doing my degree. Well, not that degree. I ended up doing a master's in business. So it was a postgraduate. But really, it's a piece of paper. It means nothing. But it was always something that I was like, okay, I didn't leave that. That was incomplete. So I always thought, you know, it was something to go back and do. But as far as staying in banking, yeah, it wasn't a passion. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't particularly like it. So it was always, I always gave myself an end date. So at 30, that was when I was going to leave. And the media stuff kind of happened by accident. So it wasn't some, you know, grand design and, you know, I'm going to transfer to this sector. It was by accident. So,
and you loved it and kept going with it and made it work.
Yeah, I mean, I just had people. I never really. Yeah, I just had people call me and say, "Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" And it just grew from that.
And I read somewhere that your early articles, the first ones, were judging the football players and
that was my best stuff. So no, the way it all started was like, and this was the only bit of actual proactive stuff I did. I mean, if I was a bit more proactive, I could take a bit of credit for things. But so the only proactive thing I did was I was like looking at the paper and I was like, oh, the sports gossip is just so lame and so, you know, it's just embarrassing. So I wrote a note to the Herald Sun sports editor at the time. He's still at the paper in a different role. And it was just this crazy letter saying, you know, this is just pathetic and I can do better in my sleep, or, you know, but it was a bit more it was a bit more boastful than even that. Anyway, not expecting, it was just like a joke, but he called me and said, yeah, come in for a meeting. I'm like, what? And then he at the time we had MX, which was like a freebie paper the News Corp had. So it was like, I think they published like 100,000 copies a day and they gave them away in the CBD and at train stations. And he came out in the afternoon, not in the morning. So that was, and he goes, so he goes, yeah, go do this, what you're proposing, do it for MX. And I'm like, okay. So it was like I was still working in banking and I did that as just sort of a hobby. It was like just a bit of a laugh on the side.
And fun.
And yeah, and then when SCN, which is a sports radio station, which, you wouldn't listen to it nowadays, but in its previous life, it was just starting up, I think, and they called and wanted me to do, just trying to think, I think initially I was just doing one segment, and then that grew to like an hour, and that grew to a show, and then that became, like a weekly show, and that was still really a hobby then. It still wasn't really a job. But then I started writing. So the very first serious piece I wrote was when my son was born, and it was about breastfeeding. And it was all about, you know, breastfeeding rates and Australia's breastfeeding rates compared to other places and campaigns around breastfeeding. So that was like, you know, the most important thing in my world at that time. So I wrote that, and that was for the Herald Sun. And so that was 2007 where I made the switch to, okay, I'm actually going to write. It's not going to just be a hobby. I'm actually going to, you know, put a bit of effort into it. And so I started doing, you know, pieces about social issues, political issues, cultural issues. And so, yeah, it grew from there. And then, you know, we went from being...
And the really important part about that also was that you initiated the contact. I mean,
only the first one. After that, everything that happened was people calling me, which is not, like, if I'm giving advice to kids, that's not the way to do it. Like, you've got to hustle, you've got to chase, you've got to push. But I actually never did, because having a banking, finance background and not being a media person, that stuff made me really uncomfortable. So, like, I never, even to this day, I don't have what they call a sizzle reel. Like, you know, for ages I thought about putting one together, but I never did, because it was not, beyond that initial joke letter to the sports editor, there wasn't any hustle. Like, you know, to this day, I don't have an agent.
So what you're saying, you really need to have a plan or goals and know how you're going to go after them, or
no, because I didn't, and I'm here. But I'm saying, if I was giving advice to a young person, I wouldn't tell them to do what I did. I would say I was exceptionally lucky that you know, I got opportunities and people contacted me and asked me to do things, and I did them, and then that led to something else, and that led to something else. But if I were advising someone who wanted to be in this industry, I would do it very differently to how I did it. I would have the hustle, and I would chase things, and I would have a sizzle reel. I would send things to people who can help you and give you opportunities. I would probably have an agent. I would probably have, you know, all the things I didn't do. So I was just lucky. Like, I would have somebody, like, I think I had the Sunrise producer who saw me tweeting something, and he contacted me and he said, "Oh, do you want to come on Sunrise to have an argument about this issue?" And I was like, "Oh, really?" So, and then I went and did that, which was, like, you know, really not my thing, and it wasn't, you know, my area of expertise even. It was just like, you know, I was just recounting known data, but, you know, it wasn't, you know, obviously I'm not someone who's expert in that. What was that first one? I think it was about tornadoes or some sort of, I don't know, natural disasters. And then doing that, someone saw me from Sky News, saw me do that segment, and asked me to appear on their show, like do a panel or something. And then that, you know, so so I have been, like, exceptionally lucky that despite not having the hustle and not doing the self-promotion, but also I had that
your personality, like the most brilliant thing about you, from my perspective, is that you're completely authentic, you're completely natural, and you're comfortable in your own self, which allows you to tell your truth, or what it is that you really think and believe.
Well, yeah, and, I mean, I'm in that game. There's nothing else to say.
But
like, why would you?
Like, not a lot of people have that.
Well, then they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be in the opinion game, because, like, you have to be authentic. You have to say what you think. You have to. Otherwise, I don't even know why you'd want to be doing it if you're not saying what you think. Because what possible pleasure could you have in it?
Yeah, but you could be doing something completely different and still be a complete wuss, because you don't have that belief in yourself and that self-confidence.
Well, no, I mean,
and my question is, where do you think it comes from? Because you've definitely got it. You can see that a lot of people don't. Is it because of what you went through when you were a child in Iran? Was it because of your family dynamic? What was it, do you think, that gives you this sense, this real sense of who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's all contributed to it. So, you know, whether it's nature or nurture, I'm sure it's a combination of both. But I think if you've gone through any sort of hardship, you have less tolerance for bullshit, and you kind of have a much greater sense of who you are and what you believe and what you stand for. And, like, I'm someone who's got very strong convictions, so whether we're talking politically or personally, And I think people who have that are pretty unshakable in them. So even if, a position, whether it's a position that 90% of the population agree with, or one that puts you as an outlier, it doesn't really matter because and one of the things that, like, I'm not one of those who wants to work until I drop dead. Like, I always think about, if you only had 5 years to live, what would you be doing? Would you be working the hours you're working? Would you be having, dramatically different lifestyle? So I don't want to get to a point and regret.
Rita, have there been things that have shaken you or that have made you question what you believe or you should do?
Not really. No, I mean, the things where I'm, like I may not, like I may have been naive about something. So, once your eyes are open to something, then you so my rule is always, when people show you who they are, you believe them the first time. Right. So, but that doesn't mean you go through life not trusting anybody either. But, you don't allow yourself to be used. So that's like a big thing for me is, particularly when I talk to sort of young women, is to have not just the belief but the self-respect, and to have that expectation that you're going to be...
Self-respect is a huge one.
Yeah, to be, you're going to be treated well, and you're going to have that independence and strength to, do what's right for yourself. But again, that's not for everybody. You know what? Like, I sometimes think when you look at the number of women, particularly like my generation was supposed to be the childless generation, Generation X, but it's even bigger amongst millennials and Gen Zs and, the predictions of the percentage who are going to be going through life not being mothers. And that's perfectly fine. Like, there's a lot of women who have no interest in that, and good luck to them. But if you actually do want to have that, and your choices take you to a position where you don't have that, like, that can be devastating. Because I know of some friends who desperately wanted to be mums, and just circumstances and a variety of factors stop that occurring, and it's a regret they have to live with the rest of their lives. So
I always thought I'd have 10 kids and be happily married, and I haven't married yet.
Did you want? So you wanted to have kids? I
definitely wanted to have kids. So at this stage, I'm not devastated by it, but I'm so impressed when I see what you've done, and that you allowed it to happen.
But I'm thinking, like, sometimes even. I sometimes wonder whether the advice we give young girls is really to their benefit, because it's fantastic to be independent. It's fantastic to have financial independence and have options and all sorts of power over your life. But there's also a price that comes with all that.
Yes.
And I don't know if we are completely honest about that. And this focus on, have your kids later, focus on your studies and your career. I sometimes wonder whether you flip that around, and you don't always have that as the ideal path to follow, because I think we're going to find out in the coming years.
What I've realised is everybody's got their own path, no matter what you plan.
I know that, but the culture does tell a certain narrative, and a lot of girls and young women are ignorant about a lot of fairly crucial data, including their own fertility. There's just this assumption that, okay, I'll have kids when I'm in my late 30s or early 40s, because that's not uncommon these days, but it actually is really difficult, and it can be really difficult to do without intervention, IVF or whatever else, or it can be even at that stage with IVF, it may not happen. And I just think, again, we talked about how much coverage of COVID we had, and yet there was a fairly profound ignorance about basic statistics around the disease and death rates and so on. And I wonder whether there's a similar thing with the culture when it comes to the messages we're giving girls and young women. I'm just thinking out loud. As I said, I've been up since 4 a.m, so none of this may be coherent.
No, you're doing great. But most, I think that most people really have dreams and ideals and everything, but it's the ability to be able to just stop and appreciate what you do have. And
exactly, that's
the fact that it's all good. It's all good. No matter what you do in life, you will... That experience gives you your life experience, and it's all good.
Gratitude's a big thing, isn't it? Like if you're generally a grateful person, then you tend to be happier, and you tend to
appreciate what you've got rather than always looking somewhere else. But I think that's a wonderful thing about life. We're given options, and whatever options you take you into
but everything
places.
Comes with a cost. That's also as much as you appreciate what you have, and if you made different choices, a lot of what brings you joy now may not be there, but undoubtedly comes with costs. So
the cost is also can also be looked at differently, because my byline for Lily High on Life is change your attitude, change your life. So if you're standing in the middle of something that's happened and all these circumstances that you feel you're a victim to, you can think about them differently, and that different interpretation of what's happened can raise your level of joy, because it's all about how you feel.
I mean, it's outlook is pretty important, but I mean, it's your outlook, and it's the one thing you can change instantly, and that you're in total control over. So whatever it is that happens, you can make it sound good to yourself if you choose to. But it's so you can't fool yourself. That's another thing, though. You can't. You can change your outlook. You can take time to appreciate what you have and what you should be grateful for. But there are some fundamental, mistakes that you can't sugarcoat.
Like, have you got an example, or you just are you thinking?
Like not buying a property that you should have bought, or selling a property you shouldn't have sold. You can't sugarcoat that, because that's like a black and white kind of a mistake. And
but it's still
maybe
okay.
You bought something else, but again, you can compare the two and know you took the wrong path.
Live life without regrets. Wow. Rita, it's just been a delight to speak to you. It really has, especially knowing that you got up at 4:30 this morning.
I don't normally.
And this is the evening.
But I do Sundays and Tuesdays this year. But so I'm not normally one to rise that early, but when I've got
a work stuff?
So Sundays I've got Outsiders, so we're on air at 9, so we've got a fair bit of prep, and I like to write early. I prefer to write as close to the show as I can. You could write the night before if you were sensible, and And Tuesday I've got that overtime show we discussed. So typically I would not get up this early, but I have been trying to get up earlier because you get so much more out of the day. I mean,
absolutely.
If you get up at 4:30, that's a long day.
It really is. Just tell me what you're still looking forward to in life.
Well, I mean, the next chapter is going to be exciting because I'm not exactly sure, because a little bit of it is out of my hands. But if my son does want to do university in the States, that opens up all sorts of different options.
And you were born there, so you can do it.
Oh, yeah. So... but again, I mean, that's a difficult choice, picking the university, picking the town. So we did a sort of a road trip last year through Texas, and he looked at a few campuses, and would do another one through Florida whilst he's doing his VCE. So, you get a bit of an idea of at least, what the places are like and what the towns are like. So that would be exciting if I did that, but, that may not be the next step. But
be a correspondent from the States, maybe.
Oh, you know what? I'm not even thinking about the work aspect particularly. Like, I'm sure opportunities will come along, but it's more of a...
Well, Dave Rubin's already interviewed you over there, and
before he was like, he's in Florida now. But when I first talked to him, he was in California still. So there is actually quite a growing contingent of media types in Texas and Florida. A lot of them have moved from like New York and California and the more sort of traditional markets, where they would normally be, because they'd rather be in the red states, and particularly with the very varied experience America had with COVID, where New York's and California's were locked down hard and long, and Florida and Texas were open and living pretty normally. Particularly Florida was first, but Texas was open from March 2021. So that's
I believe that Donald Trump will get his second term.
Well, there's every chance. He's still, I think, to me, it's a two-horse race. I mean, some people still see him as the front runner. Some see DeSantis as in the box seat. But it's between those two. I know it's unwise to say that, because the Republican primaries are really hard fought for, and the obvious candidate often doesn't get the selection, but I just can't see anybody coming close to those two, particularly if DeSantis puts his hand up for 2024.
The reason I really want Trump to get in is because he's the only one that can get what needs to be done quickly and out of the way, because he really doesn't give a shit. And then fix it all up and let DeSantis come on in.
Well, DeSantis is so young. So, I mean, in the ideal world, which I don't know why everyone says this is not possible, but in the ideal world, it would be a DeSantis Veep with Trump running it. But
absolutely.
But they apparently are too similar, and they're both alphas, and I've heard all sorts of explanations of why that's, but again, on paper, that's what you would do if you were DeSantis.
Absolutely.
Because he's already been an amazing governor through a really remarkable time in history, and he went against everybody, even went against what the Trump administration was really advising. The criticism he copped, both in not just Florida and America but internationally, was enormous, and he withstood it all. And then you serve for 4 years as a Veep, and then that's the perfect apprenticeship to be president. But no one thinks that's possible. So that little dream, I think it will just remain in my head.
And as long as Trump's president, I don't really think it matters who's his vice president, because Mike Pence proved that it really doesn't matter. But
the Veeps are... Well, you can have Veeps who are very powerful, but the Veeps are often a fairly
Yeah, definitely.
It's the title more so than the power.
Anything else?
But I mean, you've had some powerful leaps.
Rita, it has been absolutely lovely. I am so sorry to have kept you for so long.
No,
but there have been a couple of directions, and loved having you, and look forward to your shows. I actually tape Outsiders every Sunday, so I don't have to get up at 9 o'clock. But it's the best show on television.
Yeah, Outsiders is for a long time done really well. It's the most watched on Sky News. So it's which is surprising because it's on at Sunday mornings. Normally your most watch are prime time. 7, 8 p.m, 6 p.m. time slots. So it's a little bit unusual, but we're lucky because we've got 3 co-hosts who've just got a good chemistry and a good
great
mix.
chemistry,
and you can't manufacture that. You just got to either get lucky or
think so brilliantly together. Some of the stuff that comes out is amazing, and Rowan also doing Spectator as well. It's like, oh my God, how much can a person do in a day? But
and James is like the chief political reporter for the telly, so he's spending all this time in Canberra, backwards and forwards. So it's a busy schedule for everybody. So it's
may the good times continue for a whole lot longer.